Welcome back to the High Performance Hub podcast. Today we are joined by Steven Cohen. He is unbelievably successful. What we're going to dive into today is the art of entrepreneurial drive, success, growth, everything, and he has got one incredible story that we are going to dive deep into. Steven, welcome, my mate.
Tom, thank you, dude. Excited to be here.
Mate, I can't wait for this. So I want to kick this off, mate, by asking you about college and that process to kind of where you are now.
Yeah, so I'm actually raised here in Las Vegas, so shout out to all the locals listening. Pretty average upbringing, dude. Both my parents combined made like $40,000 in a year. One was a school teacher, the other one was a security guard. So super average professional career. And growing up, no one in my family really went to college. So my goal was always, hey, graduate high school, go to college, do the whole 40-40-40 plan, which is, I call it, which is you go to school, hopefully get a degree, go work 40 hours a week for 40 years of your life, and then hopefully retire one day off 1/4 of your income. And that was kind of my plan. So I ended up graduating high school, Cimarron, shout out the locals. Went to UNLV for a year, joined a fraternity because I bought into the concept that college is supposed to be the best 4 years of your life. I'm sure people have heard that before, and I wanted to maximize the experience. I quickly realized, though, a year into it, I was never really big into school. I never really did great in college, in high school. Only had like a 2.6 GPA. I just thought that if I wanted to be successful, make money, have freedom, not do what my parents did because they didn't go to college, that college was really the route. I quickly realized, though, that, bless their heart, my business professor, I was going to school for business, was making $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year teaching me how to make a business. So I quickly realized, man, one, someone can't teach you something if they're not doing it themselves. Someone can't take you on a path if they haven't walked that path. So I was like, why am I here? I don't enjoy it. I feel like I'm not learning anything valuable. And then thankfully, I feel like sometimes when the teacher, the student is ready, the teacher appear kind of moment happened where a buddy of mine introduced me to entrepreneurship. I saw a YouTube video on how college was a scam. I don't believe it's a scam, but to each their own. I dropped out the next day, and that's kind of how I pursued my entrepreneur journey. I got into network marketing at the time. I was 21, 22 years old, and that led me to solar, which I found a couple of years later.
Mate, that's amazing. And it's funny because the previous two guests were talking about school and college, what we call it university in the UK, but how it doesn't really, don't get me wrong, like if you're going to be a doctor or something like that, then yes. But I went to university to study sports management. If you ask me, one thing that I learned was to control my drinking.
Yeah.
Because it did nothing for me. And I said yesterday in the podcast that I've learned more by running my own business than I have through the entire education kind of systems.
Yeah, it's really interesting because we're conditioned from a really early age that you go to high school, you go to this institution, fundamental, at least in America, up until 12th grade, you graduate. And then most people, you're supposed to go right into college, which is kind of crazy. You know, you're 17, 18 years old, which to some degree are very valuable times in your life. Like, I'm very grateful that I made a decision early on in my adulthood to do something different away from what everyone else was doing. Because all my fraternity brothers, all my friends going to college, when I told them I was dropping out, I was doing this business, self-employed thing, they thought I was crazy, stupid. How do you think you could be successful? Lots of criticism. And this is about 10 years ago, 12 years ago. So this is not as prevalent as social media is today and the influencer, and people can really make a lot of money outside of the normal traditional school system. But back then it was very foreign. And it's so interesting because John C. Rockefeller has a quote. He's the inventor of the modern day education system. He says that I want a nation of workers, not a nation of thinkers. And I think it's so true because college trains you on how to be an employee, right? You're conditioned by a bell. You give up 4 years, 4 prime years of your life where a lot of people after college, they get straight into a career, then they have a family, then they have kids, and then they kind of get stuck in quagmire where they don't have as much flexibility to go try something they're passionate about, or they don't have as much freedom as maybe they did during college to go experiment with new things, new industries to actually see what they want. And I have so many friends that bought into that plan, bought into that system, and now they're working a job they don't love, they're stuck, they have a mortgage, they have kids, and they're not happy because they feel like they were forced. They did everything right based on what society told them. And now they're barely able to afford their rent. They're living paycheck to paycheck. They can't take vacations. And they have a little bit of disgruntlement about it because they bought into what everyone said they should do in reality instead of listening to what they thought they should do.
Very well said. Unbelievable, mate. And then going back into solar, building a very successful business with that. Was the first step with that, I'm sure you'll go into that itself, but the first step in being like, right, I'm going to not essentially put all my eggs in one basket, but this is like, I'm pushing this. Because one thing that I've realized is even though you know it's the right thing, each step outside your comfort zone or that step forward is always a bit like, oh, I shit myself a little bit. But with entrepreneurs, you need to take that step. Because what I love as well, when you're working for yourself, you haven't got a choice but to do the hard shit. Whereas if you're working, well, for an organization or something, you can like push it to the side or something. So was that first step, what was that first step?
I'm glad you brought that up. There's a great quote. It says, if you do in life what is easy, your life's going to end up hard. But if you do in life what is hard, your life's going to end up easy. To your point, I think most people choose the easy route of working for someone else, buying into the 40-40-40 plan, but then their life's hard later versus someone like us that decided to choose the hard route at first, but then their life becomes a little bit easier as time goes on. And that was really me, dude. So after college, I went to do network marketing. Didn't really work out, but I learned a ton of skills. I did 3 years of meetings weekly, plugging into mentors, starting to read books, because in college and high school, I never really saw the value in reading. I was the guy that would really spark note the book report the night before and just try and create the synopsis to try and get a C- to hopefully just pass the class. I hated reading. And then when I started to get into the real world and I started learning more about like the spiritual laws of success and how life actually works or success actually works, I realized, man, leaders are readers. If I want to become someone different, I'm going to have to start acting as is. And the only way to do that is to get new information. Information changes situations. So after network marketing, I didn't have any money. This is around 2015, but I had a ton of skills. I started learning how to public speak effectively. I started learning about sales. I started learning about emotional intelligence, which wasn't taught in school. Started learning about personal finances, all this mystical information that was never taught in the classroom. I started to learn from this vacuum of network marketing. So in 2015, I had to make a decision. I was like, okay, I feel different, but my results are still not there. I'm still broke. I still only have $600 in my bank account. Like, what am I going to do? So again, a buddy reached out to me. Shout out to Austin, one of my best friends. He's getting married here in a couple months. He hit me up about this door-to-door opportunity where there were kids basically leaving their states, going to New Jersey. It was paid-for housing, kind of like a summer camp vibe, and they were knocking doors selling pest control, making $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 in a summer, which at the time was big money back in 2015, especially in 5 months. So I basically quit my part-time job at Planet Hollywood. I was working on the Strip, selling cabanas, and went out there to go sell pest control. Went out there, did it for 3 days, and it wasn't for me. Didn't love the culture, and intuitively something was telling me this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. So I ended up staying in New York for a couple weeks with my family. Thankfully, I had family out there, saving up enough money to buy a plane ticket back, and I was at rock bottom. I've been in the entrepreneur space for 3 years at that time, but had zero success. Everyone that told me I wasn't going to succeed was, laughing at me, and all the critics and all the haters of, go back to school, go get a real job. And I was at this moment where it was either make or break. I either needed to really commit and follow through with who I thought I was, or I had to go conform and go back to what everyone thought I was, which was an idiot, a dreamer, so on and so forth. So thankfully, call it universe, God, serendipity, whatever, a buddy introduced me to this solar concept door-to-door. I was like, okay, I didn't have the best experience doing pests. Solar makes sense. It's in Vegas. It's in my hometown. It's a little less intimidating. Let me just jump in. And that was really the start, dude. I started knocking doors 6 days a week, basically 6 to 8 hours a day in the heat of July in Las Vegas, which is like 120 degrees out.
And the people that don't live in Vegas, that's
it's freaking
like
hot.
40 degrees Celsius. It is so hot.
Yeah, dude, and just started grinding, just really started fully surrendering to the craft and committing, and things started working. I started making some money. I made my biggest commission check ever. I think it was like $8,000, and I realized like this was it. And my intent, the interesting thing was, my intent getting into this was never to make millions of dollars. It was really just to make enough money where I can live on my terms, where I didn't have to clock in or clock out, where I didn't have to have an employer or a boss determine what my worth was. I just wanted to make enough money where I could actually have some type of control over my life to then figure out what I want to do long term. 10 years later, obviously, it turned into a career. We launched our own business back in 2019, where same concept. It's just a bunch of hustlers, a bunch of motivated door-to-door salesmen going out there and using the vehicle of solar to help homeowners save money, but more importantly, help them become a better individual, because door-to-door is not easy. I would say it's one of the most challenging things you can do out there. It's the rawest form of sales. So if you're able to overcome that, on the other side of that, you have to become a different individual. And I think that different individual is how you start to attract the results that you're looking to get.
Mate, that's amazing. And again, you've just basically taken us through your story of dropping out of college. And some people would be like, oh, they're successful, but don't understand the lows of the lows that you have to go through. But then those lows, because I've been through some as well, that they teach you so much about yourself. And you tried, it didn't work, you tried again, it worked, and then it's just developing and developing. And achieving so much success. So how many, is it staff? You've got a team, and you're now, I think I read online that like you're coaching your sales team to earn like 6-figure salaries.
Yeah, so we have a nationwide platform basically for sales reps to plug in and help them develop into the best person they can be using solar as the vehicle. So we have sales guys across the country. I think at our peak we had 900 or 1,000 sales reps across the country, 40-something states, all just buying into the vision of not having to conform to what everyone else. When you hear door-to-door sales, you think, I was that person. I was skeptical. I was like, people still do that. This is the 21st century. Like, I'm not Mormon. I never sold religion door to door. A lot of my business partners are. So that's the foundation they have. But it's such a trite, unique industry that most people from outside looking in, they're like, can you actually make money? Like, door to door, that's weird. But most people don't realize. I think door-to-door sales, direct sales, anything that's performance-based, 100% commission, you eat what you kill type of mentality will turn you into the person that you need to achieve anything. Like, I have so many friends that over the last decade that they dabbled in door-to-door, they did well, that are now running massive companies. They started their own online businesses, their own coaching businesses, because what it does is there's no cap on your income, so you can go create as much or as little success as you want. It's totally on you, which is empowering because most people are so dependent on their boss. They're so dependent on external circumstances to give them more abundance, where in this industry, you have to go create it yourself. You have full flexibility over your time. Everyone's a 1099 independent contractor, which I think is amazing. You don't have to raise your hand to go to the bathroom on a lunch break. You don't have to ask your boss to go on a 1-week vacation with your wife. You have full control over your schedule, which is a good thing and a bad thing, because if you can manage yourself properly, it's amazing because you have full flexibility over your life, but that's also the crutch where most people don't really maximize the opportunity, because we're so conditioned, and I think this is the big challenge with a lot of people out there that are in some type of performance-based industry. We're so conditioned through our whole life where if we're not being told what to do, sometimes we don't have the self-discipline to go do it ourselves, right? I'm sure even in your business, you probably see a lot of different fitness coaches that just aren't doing the things necessary in order to accomplish what they want, simply because they come out of this world where their whole life they're being told what to do, clock in, clock out, conditioned by a bell, this, that, and that, where now it's like, it's totally on you. It's totally on you. There's no one that is going to force you to wake up early. There's no one going to force you to make those sales calls. You have to find that inner drive and that inner rhythm in order to go do it yourself. And I think that's where a lot of people get mixed up. But for those that can fully maximize the opportunity, I think it's one of the best industries out there for someone that has maybe no background, maybe they have a tough past, maybe they don't have a formal education, maybe they didn't have a silver spoon growing up. But the beautiful thing about our industry, I think any industry that's performance-based, it doesn't matter who you were, what you've done in the past. All that matters is what you're doing today. And unlike Harvard, unlike an Ivy League school, unlike some of these corporations that require all this formal education, it doesn't. All you need is a little drive, a little desire, a little commitment, and a high teachability index, and you can go create enough success that can out-earn lawyers, doctors, etc.
Mate, amazing. One thing that I kind of want to touch upon as well is the door-to-door sales. Obviously, there's a lot of like monetary gain with that. But for me, when you were saying that, I was like, there's also other gain of like communication skills, self-confidence, the drive, genuinely just knocking on the door and being like, I've never seen this person, but I'm going to sell. So the rapport building and like understanding, like reading body language, tone of voice, all these skills as well that they're going to pick up and be able to go for different door to door. It might be a different culture in each house and their approach will be different. Obviously, the outcome is the same to get the sale, but the way they get that sale has to be different and it has to mold to each kind of prospect. So that fascinates me. I love that. And again, touching upon like performance-based, like when I was a personal trainer, did my qualifications and I went straight self-employed, but it wasn't get your qualification, have you thought about online? It was just like the norm qualification, personal training, in-person training. And I remember when I spoke to my dad, I was like, I think I'm going to go online. And my dad's like achieved a lot, didn't go to school, like very successful. And he goes, are you sure? Like, do you know, obviously they're just putting it out there. They need to ask those questions. And I was like, yeah. And then as soon on my first mentorship, I was so overwhelmed. I think I cried myself to sleep for the first week, every single night. And it was just so new. And then you realize how many moving parts are actually in a business, especially when you go online. Yes, in-person training is the same. You still have to do finances, like schedule booking, and the actual job itself. When I went online, I was like, right, so there's content, marketing, sales, and it just was so overwhelming. But if I didn't do that, I would still be in the same little gym with no growth. And I knew that there was more. So I went online and I'm still learning those things. But I think that's the beauty of being a business owner and an entrepreneur. Like, you never stop learning. And having the mindset of, I hate the mindset of, should I say, I know everything, because no one knows everything. And this is the beauty of these conversations. So I'm just there like a sponge, mate. Every time you say something, I'm like soaking it in, mate. Love it.
Yeah, I think what you said is super valuable, right? The dark night of the soul is what you had, right? Crying, questioning, did I make the right decision? I think anyone that is trying to do something different, trying to grow outside of their comfort zone, trying to go against the status quo, those nights or those moments are signals that you're on the right path. Mm-hmm. Because I don't think people aren't successful. And success means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. I don't think success is just monetary. I think success is doing something that you're fulfilled with, moving forward in some type of purpose, meaningful, having enough flexibility and resources where you can enjoy the time with your family and not have to slave away and waste your life for someone else's dream, but hopefully you're building your own. But I think the reason 97% of people out there aren't going to achieve the thing that they deep down deserve and know they want to achieve is because they're not willing to put themselves in vulnerable positions long enough to really see what they're made of. They're not willing to take that leap of faith to potentially fail, most likely fail, and put themselves in a vulnerable situation to then get back up, learn what they need to, continue to fail forward, and then eventually we can talk about it on a podcast a couple of years later. Most people just aren't willing to do that. And sometimes it's because they're in a situation where they can't, like we spoke about. They have kids, they have responsibilities, they don't have as much flexibility, but a lot of times it's just a fear thing. It's just a fear of being seen. It's a fear of being vulnerable. It's a fear of being criticized, which we all go through. Naturally, as human beings, we want to be accepted and we value other people's opinions, but you just need enough inputs going in for that season of your life to realize none of that matters, to then move forward in the direction that you want to. And when those moments come, because I believe we all get those moments, maybe not many of them, but we all have multiple moments where we can either go right or left. We can either take the road more traveled or less traveled. And the more times you take the road more traveled, the harder it is when those big moments come to then make a zag in the pursuit of what you're trying to do. And it's scary, dude. It's scary. I mean, I see it all the time. I see so many people come into the industry and they have all the potential. They tell me their why and what they want to do, and their sister or their mother or, their childhood, and they're going to do it for this. And then you see them just start to slowly get that dream beat out of them. And then you see them back at their old 9-to-5, or you see them back at their hotel job. And then when you meet them, a year or two later, you can almost feel like the defeat in their aura. And it's just so sad because it doesn't have to be like that. It really doesn't. Like, we are God's highest form of creation, and we all deserve to live life on our terms. And in America, I'm sure the UK is the same thing. There's so much opportunity. There's so much information out there that if people aren't taking advantage of it, it's simply because they're buying into their fear versus buying into their faith.
Amazing. Yeah. And it's funny you say that, because there's been multiple times where I've just thought, quit. I've been like, it's not worth it. And I've said to my wife a couple of times, it will be so much, exactly word for word, it will be so much easier for me just to get a normal 9-to-5. And then I say it, and she's like, no, she knows me. She's like, just give it a minute. And then I wake up the next day and I'm like, I couldn't think of anything worse. And it's just, we all, like you say, we all go through those moments. And it's another thing that I really resonate with is failing forward. And again, that's been a theme with every single entrepreneur that I've had, and business owner and high exec that I've had on the podcast. And it's failing forward. And one thing that the way I interpret that is, if you know where you want to go and you're failing forward in that direction, it's less scary. So that's the way I interpret it. Starting this podcast, starting online coaching, I knew there was growth. I knew that was right for me. So I took that step. There was so many failures, but each failure, it was I use this analogy for my clients, just if you make a mistake, don't worry, we're just going to fall forward. So it's like the bowling alley, you've got the barriers up. It doesn't matter how many times it hits the barriers, it's always going to go down there. And it's always moving forward. And I think that's a key lesson for people to take away, is just do the scary shit that that's right.
You've been able to change your relationship with failure. Most people haven't. Most people are still conditioned from school that if you get a big fat F on your paper, you're a failure. And they teach us that failing is bad. But in reality, failing isn't bad. Failing is the only way to get better. Failing is the only way to make onward progress. And so many people still believe that if I fail at this, I am then a failure. It starts to hurt their identity. They start to be consumed by it, when in reality, the real perspective should be every failure is a building block getting me closer to where I need to go. So I love the idea of failing forward, failing faster. And I think there's a difference between temporary defeat and failure. I think the only way you truly fail at something is if you quit or you give up on something you believe in. Mm-hmm. Everyone goes through temporary defeat, but are you going to allow yourself to stay there? Are you going to allow that circumstance to be bigger than you and not learn from it, move forward, and just get another arrow in your quiver that's going to equip you in where you're trying to go?
Yeah. Failures, when they stay as failures, they turn to defeats, because you don't, every time I fail at something, whatever it is, I dissect it and be like, right, why didn't it work? So then next time it won't happen, or if it does, just tweak it again and again and again. So what I'm really interested to ask me is, with your your sales teams, your sales reps, how do you kind of lead them, mentor them, coach them? Because with your experience, I would genuinely love to watch you sell, because I'd be trying to find my wallet straight away and be like, just take it. But what is your kind of strategy with all of that to make sure that everyone that's, I suppose, working for you is delivering on the product but matching your standards?
Believe it or not, I wasn't the best salesperson. I'm probably not the best salesperson. What I really excelled at, I was always good. I was always consistent, because as a leader, you can't have people do something that you're not willing to do. And as a leader, you can't take someone somewhere if you haven't walked that path yourself. I truly believe that. You see a lot of people out there that maybe sound good and the things that they're saying sound right, but you have this intuitive feeling that they're maybe not lying, or like there's not authenticity in their ways of being. They're not congruent. That's because they're out of integrity. They're saying something, but they're not actually embodying and living that. And we can feel that as humans, right? It's a transfer of energy and emotion. So as a leader, I think the first thing that you need to do is you need to continue to level yourself up, because I'm a big John C. Maxwell fan, and he has a book called 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, and he talks about rule number 1 is the law of the lid. The law of the lid basically states that your level of leadership your level of effectiveness will never exceed your level of leadership. Meaning that if you're a level 4 leader, you can never get level 5 or above results. It'll always be level 4 or below results. It's almost kind of like if you put a bunch of grasshoppers in a jar and you put the lid on, and then you take the lid off after a long enough period of time, even though the lid is off, they're going to continue to hop to where that lid was there, even though there's nothing there, they could hop out. It's the same thing when it comes. We put these invisible lids or ceilings on ourselves because of our layers and levels of leadership. So first and foremost, if you're leading anyone, whether it's you're leading your family, you're leading a sales team, you're leading your community, whatever, you need to continue to put yourself as the priority. I believe in being selfish to be selfless. Like over the years, if I was trying to fill all these other people's cups and not filling my own, I would have went dry. Versus the mindset of I'm just going to pour so much into myself that it then overfills into everyone else. It's a completely different perspective. So I need to continue to get better. I need to continue to level up. I need to continue to learn information, put myself in vulnerable situations, continue to grow my wealth, my identity, my positive attitude, because then I'm able to serve at the highest level, not the other way around. And I think by doing that, as the water rises, so do the boats. Leadership is everything. If there is a failing company and someone buys a failing company, the first person that they look at to let go is the leader. It's the CEO, because they know that if you cut off the head of the snake, you can rebuild. It's never the people underneath the leader. It's always the leader. Attitude reflects leadership. I also believe in the concept of extreme ownership, which is another great book, where things may not be your fault as a leader, but it's your responsibility to fix them. And I think one of the biggest challenges that most people have in my organization, direct sales, and you can see it, the second someone goes victim, the second they are defeated, the second that you can't serve them or support them. Your question was, how do I effectively lead people and add value? Well, it's modeling the frame and the example that you want your people to model, taking ownership over situations when something arises or a problem, handling it head on, and you being the person to take ownership. But if you take full responsibility for all the good and the bad in your business and your life, then you're almost invincible, because it doesn't matter what circumstances hit you, you then have the power to change it, versus what everyone else does. Oh man, the reason I didn't hit my sale quota this month is because the territory sucked, or because my manager didn't give me enough mentorship, or because of the economy, or Donald Trump, or Elon Musk, or whatever. You're always putting blame on outside circumstances, and guess who doesn't have the power to change anything? You don't. Versus, man, yeah, it kind of sucks that the economy's down right now. Ooh, I probably shouldn't have invested that much in the stock market. Man, I probably shouldn't have knocked that area because I had a string of reschedules and failed credit. But that's just a learning lesson for me, because I did that. Therefore, now I have the power to change it and not allow that mistake. So to answer your question, I would say it's continuing to level up yourself, continuing to pour into me. That was a big mistake I made early in my career. I was always trying to give so much to other people. I was always trying to add value, be there for everyone else, that I was running dry. Therefore, the conversations, the meetings, the presentations, the one-on-ones, all the things that I did in order to facilitate value, I wasn't as potent as I could have been, because I was so burning the flame on both edges. Versus, let me make sure I'm in a peak state. Let me make sure my cup is filled. So then all the interactions and conversations I have with my people, I am then conveying that at the highest level, with the highest level of authenticity, and transferring the most I can to the individuals.
I love that, mate. One thing that I've done my best not to interrupt you, but I've been saying this for like well over a year now. Like, being selfish to be more selfless.
It's huge.
It's as soon as I said that to like some of my clients, like one of my clients, his missus is ill with like cancer, and it's tough. And he's obviously burning the candle at all ends. And he was like running himself thin, and I was like, put more time into you. And he goes, yeah, but that's selfish. I was like, that's the whole point. Because then you'll have more energy for her. You'll have more energy for your family. And again, when your cup's full, it's going to overflow into everything else and everyone else. One thing that, again, the main reason for this podcast is to give value. But if we both sat here, like slumped, tired, didn't get a good sleep last night, all these kind of things to not do our best to give as much value, then we're not just doing ourselves a disservice, we're doing clients and prospective clients and people watching, viewers, a disservice as well. So I love that.
I don't know who came up with the idea that being selfish is bad. I'm sure it's from hundreds of years ago. And sure, you don't want to be a narcissist. You don't want to only care about yourself and hurt other people. That's not the selfish we're talking about. But if everyone in the world just focused on themselves and taking care of themselves and making sure themselves were the best individuals and they were fed and they were aligned and they were happy and they were meaningful, like there would be no problems in the world. But most people, they're so focused externally on other things and circumstances and what's not going right and this person should have did that for them. Like, let's talk about who's really selfish. Am I selfish because I want to focus on myself and making sure I'm in a good state and making sure my resources and my house is in order? Or are you selfish for thinking that I should be focusing on you? Like, who's the real selfish person here? So I think the whole concept of selfish is kind of funny because the only way to make any type of impactful impact for other people is for you to be selfish. When you look at the billionaires or the people we look up to, the Gandhis and the Mother Teresas, like all these super iconic people, the MLKs, like they were selfish. They had to get their house in order. They needed to make sure that they were taken care of emotionally. They had to make sure that they were in a place where when they showed up to the people that they wanted to serve, they were able to give them 100%, not just 50%. So I think we really need to think and rewire the perception that we have about being selfish. I think if everyone was more selfish, things would be a lot better in this world.
Yeah, I love that. And that's what I push on to like my clients, people that have their own businesses, entrepreneurs. And they're like, oh, I haven't got any time. I'm like, right, well, you tell me where you're spending your time. And usually they're not spending enough time on themselves, not anything to do with their business or families or anything. But if you just can allocate half an hour to 60 minutes a day for yourself, that is going to give you more energy for your kids. You're going to feel better. And then you just compound like the habits and kind of the structure, the framework that we do. You're going to be more confident. You're going to have more energy. Your libido is going to go up. All these other things because you started to focus on yourself. And what you said, like changing the narrative of selfishness, I think is amazing. It's unbelievable. And you've got your own podcast as well, haven't you?
I do. Yeah, it's called Millennial Millionaire, about 77 episodes in. I started about a couple of years ago. I never thought I would be a podcast guy or even created content. I was always hesitant to it. It goes back to our earlier conversation of doing the things that make you uncomfortable and make you vulnerable, because on the other side of that, the cove you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. It's a Bob Proctor quote. But for a really long time, I was just really focused on my business and solar and doing my thing and just living a really good offline life. But one of my long-term big goals that I discovered through my journey of entrepreneurship is I love public speaking. I love being able to add value to people. I think it's the closest thing that someone like me could get to being a rock star or a superstar. I'm not naturally talented at really anything. I'm not a good singer or guitar player or anything like that. So being able to convey a story or transfer energy to a group of people about something that I've experienced, that I've done for the last 12 years in terms of my sales team, but extrapolating that into more people is something that I'm super passionate about. And I noticed that the only way for me to start taking steps to doing that eventually is to create a brand. It's to get online. Your impact is limited to who knows you. You could be the best speaker with the most value and the most wisdom and be worth billions of dollars. But if only 10 people know who you are, you're limited to the amount of impact that you can share. And in 21st century, the way that you get more eyeballs, more attention, more impact, more visibility is social media. It's a free platform. So at first, I just started making talking head videos of concepts that I enjoyed. And that was fun for a little bit, but it felt a little bit unorganic to me. So I'm like, okay, well, what's another outlet that I can use to still produce short-term content for social media, to start building my brand, getting my thoughts and concepts and ideas out there, but make it a little bit more organic. And that's kind of where the podcast was born. And the funny thing is, dude, when I first started the podcast, I had zero expectation. I just thought, hey, we're going to build some content. I'm going to meet some cool people. We're going to have a sick conversation like we're having now. We'll chop it up, throw it on social media, and 10 years from now, that'll compound, and I'll be speaking to tens of thousands of people. That's kind of the goal. But what I didn't realize was the networking that I can get from podcasting would blow away any other perk of creating the actual show. The amount of leverage you have when you have a podcast, first, we would have never met if you didn't have a podcast, right? We would have never went to coffee or anything like that. And now we have awesome conversation, hopefully do things after this. But it's so interesting because in today's world, successful people or high caliber, high value people are getting blown up all the time. Hey, let me go pick your brain, take you out to coffee. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to say no. The crazy thing, though, is if you have a podcast that you've actually put a little work into, and that is shown by the reps that you put in, based on how many episodes you have, anyone that makes it past, I think it's 25 episodes, is in like the top 5% of the podcast game. The bar is very, very low to stand out. But if I hit up a Bradley, if I hit up one of these super successful people that normally wouldn't give me the time of day unless I write them a check for 20 grand and ask them a few times to be on my podcast, and they see that it's legit, they're going to go on the podcast because it's a mutual win. They're getting exposure to my audience. I'm getting exposure to their audience. We're building a connection. We're getting content. So for me, dude, the networking's been crazy, way more than any type of mastermind or networking event I've been through. Just being able to use the platform to invite like-minded people, have an uninterrupted conversation for an hour, which is rare. Not cell phones, not being all over the place, like true presence. And then whatever comes from it long-term will come from it. So I've really enjoyed my podcast journey. My goal is not to monetize or anything like that in the short term, but just the networking has expanded my Rolodex so much that I think is, we all know that your network is your net worth.
Yeah, I can relate to that so much. And obviously I'm in the beginning of starting a podcast, but even with the handful of episodes I've done so far, it's just the communication and the connection of building that network, but also allowing it to be a space where there's no, like you say, interruptions. Because I can't, now you said that and I was like, there's actually no hour in the day apart from this hour that the phone's not buzzing or the phone's not ringing. And it's monetizing this, like, again, it's not even crossed my mind. It's just about giving value and giving a space and a place for people to learn, but also me. Like I said before we jumped on, I was like, every time I sit in this chair, I'm a sponge. There's no distractions. I'm soaking everything in. I love that. And one thing that I love as well from all the conversations that I've had, and I've believed this for years, is you're a product of the 3 to 5 people you surround yourself with. So the more opportunities that I get to spend with people like yourself and whatever comes, like you say, whatever comes from it after, it's going to have impact, whatever it is, in whatever size. And that's something that I'm noting, like, mentally as well, and like with energy. So like when I'm thinking about posting a piece of content, I'm like, could it be better? And it's allowing me to like level up, even with what I do on the day-to-day. And it's that extra bit of accountability. Just be like, right, you're leveling up. Like, just keep going, because it's going to pay off. And that payoff isn't always monetary. It can be mental, physical, whatever it is. So yeah, I love that. But your first episode, were you nervous?
I wasn't that nervous because it was with a buddy of mine. So I wasn't that nervous. It wasn't good by any means, which is another cool thing of podcasting because it's in the cloud, so you can see your progress and the journey. I'm excited to have episode 500 or 400 or 600 and look back at my first 10 or 20 and be able to see the progress. Like just even in 70 episodes, the way that I can hold space for guests, the way that I can read body language, the more that I can really tune into being truly present and not listening to respond, but listening to actually heed the information. It's been pretty cool to see the evolution of it. But yeah, I wasn't super nervous, but it definitely wasn't great. So it's been cool to see. And it just kind of shows, one of the cool things about creating content is the whole concept of overnight success. You see people, even myself, I'm guilty of this. I see a Logan Paul, a Jake Paul. I see these people that are my age or younger doing these massive things. And it's easy just to put them on a pedestal and be like, oh, they got lucky. They got talent. They're just talented. They were at the right place at the right time. But if you actually look back at their archive of content and the person they were and how they carried themselves, you can literally see the difference in the who they were to who they are today and the dollars, influence, and success that has followed that.
Yeah.
And I want to show it to my kids one day. I want to show it to my future family that I have an archive of all this content that is uploaded into the cloud that will live forever.
Mm-hmm. Genuinely. And one thing I love, everyone's got a day one. You'll see these influencers, the millions and millions of views, extremely wealthy, but it was they didn't start there. And my first episode, I was sat with a client, but he was the co-founder of Shopify.
Big client.
So I was sat here and obviously asking him questions about, and I was just nervous. I was right, trying to follow this structure, but now I'm I barely look at it, because what I'm learning and developing is listening to responses and picking out key phrases or key words, but not ignoring the whole answer, if that makes sense, and then picking out and being oh, that'll be interesting. So I think that's a skill that I'm kind of developing as well.
Well, it's the skill of being present, which we don't exercise at all in the modern day world. I'm guilty of it. Like you talked about, this will probably be the only hour today that I'm not sleeping, that I'm not distracted, getting bing, bong, dong, dopamine rushing, all the things. It's interesting. So I just got back from a retreat. It was a Brotherhood Warriors personal development retreat in Costa Rica. Yeah. And it was 8 days. And there was a spiritual aspect of it. There was a physical aspect. There was a mental aspect. But during the whole event, we turn in our cell phones and we do a tech fast for 8 days. So no technology, no iPad, no TV, no anything, no cell phone. You turn it in for 8 days. And that was a big reason I wanted to do it, because I don't remember the last time that I didn't have my cell phone for 24 hours, let alone over a week. And it was so interesting because the first night, I was super anxious when I turned it in. I wanted to check in with my fiance. I wanted to check in with my family. I wanted to see how my business was doing. I wanted to watch Netflix, right? Just the dopamine withdrawals were starting to come. But then by the third day, dude, I never wanted to see a cell phone ever again. And the amount of downloads that I had, the amount of presence that I had, the amount of space that I was able to create in that container, coming back into the real world, it's really hard to reintegrate, because my goal is to try and create the essence of that throughout my day, trying to create space, create presence, because in reality, we don't just experience life, we experience the meaning that we give life. And what I don't want to do is fall too much into the Western go, more accomplishment paradigm, where then I look back in 20 or 30 years and I'm like, where'd my life go? Did I actually really enjoy my life, or was I always just in the pursuit of that next thing? Which is a balance that I've been trying to really work on over the last couple of years, because early in my career it was do whatever it takes, no matter what, be successful, win. And now I'm like, that's not a healthy way to do it. Maybe for some people, but for me, I want to experience life at the highest level. And leaning too much into the accomplishment versus the fulfillment sometimes isn't healthy. And that's when you see the billionaires, the $100 million guys, the successful and famous people going through some deep challenges and dark times. It's because they accomplished this big thing that they spent their whole life at, but at what cost? And I think being present is really a piece of that formula to really unlock the fullest level of life.
Yeah, I've taken all that on board, because that's something that I'm trying to develop, but I'm struggling with, because we both love what we do. So the passion never falls short. It's there. So if I don't feel like I'm not saying we don't progress every single day, but as long as I'm being productive, efficient, action, then I feel like I've kind of wasted a day. Especially when you work for yourself. Anyone that works for an organization won't really understand this, but you are always on. There's always something to do. And my wife's said it a lot. She'd be like, "You're not here. You're not present." And that like annoys me because I feel like I am, but then when I think about it, I'm really not. So it's developing that balance, and it's not a case of, okay, oh, you've had good balance for that week. It's implementing it as like a business task and be like, no phone. So what I do now, like every morning, I wake up, don't check my phone. Like I'm a blank canvas and just use the first 2-3 hours for like deep work or just me. And then I check my phone where I return to clients and all these things. But it's that reminder for me in the sense that it's an ongoing process to make sure it's part of your routine, not, oh, you've done it for 2 days out of the month. And that's something that I am honestly kind of struggling to come to terms with, because since I started online coaching, I just feel like I've been driving, and that's been like 2.5, 3 years. So now I'm getting to the point, well, linking back into what you said about refilling your cup so it spills over into everyone and everything else. And I feel like I do that, but so there's some weekends, mate, I'll finish the working week and I'm just like spent. And I was like, I want to have energy for the weekend and enjoy and do things with my wife, do things with my mates, play golf. And yeah, so I've taken that on board, mate. And
there's also seasons, though. As much as I think I'm in a season of balance right now for myself and trying to integrate both sides of me, the accomplishment, more hustle mentality, success at all cost, but then the lighter side is being present, focus on the now, creating depth, breathing into my day to create space from what I'm doing versus who I am. I wasn't always like that, and I think a lot of people may be in a season of hustle right now, right? Like I couldn't afford and have the leisure to do that when I was first starting my business. I needed to be on all the time, which wasn't super healthy because I sacrificed my health to some degree. I wasn't taking care of my body. I wasn't working out. I didn't really have a social life. All I focused on was the season of I need to grind. I need to get momentum. I need to get this business off the ground. But eventually you evolve depending on what season you're in. That's why I'm a big component of self-awareness and understanding, when to zig and when to zag, and knowing where you are in your journey of what you're trying to accomplish. When you get to a point where maybe things are in motion and you have a little bit more leverage, I'm a big fan of leverage. Leverage is important. It's the reason why you're online coach versus in person, because you have a lot more leverage. Once you have a little bit more leverage, then you can start, I think, integrating some of these Eastern concepts, some of these mindfulness concepts, a little bit more stillness into your day, because now you can really bring those and correlate those both together. Buddha was a prince before he accomplished everything that he did. He tasted the success, the monetary, and realized that that's not what life is all about. And then he pursued his journey of stillness and mindfulness and meditation and all the things that we'd all know him for.
yeah.
So I think it's important, especially in the world of entrepreneurship. I feel like more people now, at least in our audience and the people that we probably associate with and your viewers, are more on the side of more hustle, whatever it takes, versus the other spectrum. But I think depending on the season you're in, bringing in more of that stillness and presence and balance will not just create a better life for them, but I also think it'll help them be more effective in their business and their life.
Yeah, I do think as well, like for any startup business owner, entrepreneur, the first 5 years really, you have to dig in and grind and push and create something, and then it's more of like delegation, hiring staff and putting all those systems in place once the infrastructure's been built. And one thing that I'm trying to implement to get more balance through my week is having push and pull days. Not in the gym, I mean like with work. So like having a push day followed by a pull day where I pull back and have less intense tasks to do. So then like managing my mental energy as well as physical through the week. And I'm seeing a massive kind of impact from that. And again, it's just a slow process of, again, being more aware. And I said it on a previous podcast, like the more awareness that we gain, the more control we have. And the more mature, really, that we'll be in certain situations. And my mentor, he sets goals for quarters in the year. And last year was like, your goal for next year is to take more time off. I was like, that is a goal that I will do my best in achieving. Because I would rather it be that than you need to work more. I'd rather it be that way round of me taking more time off than, okay, you need to actually do another 20 hours a week, which I haven't got in me at the minute.
Yeah, it's working on the business versus just working in the business. Two big distinctions, right? Working in the business is making your sales calls, coaching your clients, making a new social media campaign, working on marketing, like all that stuff's important. But I would say that the 80-20 rule is super prevalent there. 20% of the things you're working on is actually creating 80% of the results. Most people, they're focusing on the 80% that's only creating 20% of the results. So back to the awareness piece, working on the business from a elevated perspective, a third-party objective view can allow you to move the pieces in your life and your business to then have enough clarity to isolate the 20% that's actually going to make the business thrive versus just continuing to spin your wheels on the 80% and being so stagnant. And I think that's where creating the space, taking a step back, taking a little bit of time off to recharge, disconnect to reconnecting, so then you can have that elevated perspective to come back with fresh eyes to make those instrumental moves versus just continuing to do the grunt work consistently and wondering why you're not making any progress.
Yeah, that's, again, the way you said that was literally is like exactly the same as what my mentor said. He was like, right, you're an unbelievable coach. Now it's time to be an unbelievable business owner. And I was literally focused on the 80% results, clients, coaching, which, don't get me wrong, is still my job. It's still vital. It's still very, very important. But I knew there was so much growth for me, but I didn't know how to get there because I've never been business orientated. Yes, I've been a business owner, but everything that grows a business, I was neglecting because I was like, oh, what do I enjoy? Coaching, communication, sweet. I'm just going to push that. Yes, I did get success with that. And that's one of the reasons why I started therapy, to understand this more. And the more I gained confidence with myself and awareness, emotional control, all these elements, it allowed me to put so much more energy, time, and action into that 20%. And what I realized is that even with putting more time into that area, like the business side, I still didn't neglect what I loved, like client communications and everything to do with the coaching. And that was a massive, massive eye-opener for me. And it made me more confident in, like, I wouldn't be doing this. And again, it's that failing forward. Like, I knew I needed help, so I was like, right, talk to me, sort me out. And it was just allowing me to understand my emotions more and then actioning on what I need to do. And if someone says, oh, you need to like do a massive, massive step. If someone said, you're going to start a podcast 6 months ago, I was like, absolutely not. But it's those small steps and, like I say, failing forward. And I love that. And there's so much value, mate, that you've given. And I kind of wish this was 2-3 hours long, not 60 minutes. If there was one bit of advice, and I know this is such a vague question, but if there was one bit of advice you could give to someone that's on the fence about doing what they were truly passionate about, or if they were stuck in the rat race, they were stuck in like the Groundhog Day, what would be, whether it be a quote, personal experience, or the first step they need to take, what would you advise that to be?
I'd say commit first and figure it out later. I think too many people, they focus on the how. How am I going to quit my job and start my business? How am I going to leave this relationship and start over? How am I going to make a 7-figure net worth if I'm broke currently with no resources and no direction? Like, so many people focus on the how. And the crazy thing about the how is no one knows how they're going to accomplish anything big, right? You didn't know how you're going to start a podcast. You just knew why you wanted to do it. I didn't know how I was going to be able to retire my parents. I just knew that I had a deep desire and I had a lot of big reasons to do it. So too many people put too much stock into the how, and they look at it and that disables them from taking action versus focusing on the other side of the coin, which is the why. Why do I want to do this thing? Why do I want to retire my parents? Why do I want to start a podcast? Why do I want to quit my full-time coaching job that's comfortable and go online into this scary new world that I don't have any experience with? Why? Well, because I want the freedom, I want the growth, I want the impact, I'm too content. And when you focus so much on the why, when the why is big enough, the how typically figures itself out. So I would tell people, stop focusing so much on the how. Once you get locked in and you decide what you're going to do, you put the flag in the plant the flag in the ground, you burn the boats, and you say, hey, this is who I'm going to be, this is what I'm going to do, and this is why I'm doing it. People, circumstances, and events will come into your life that will support that.
Mic drop.
Boom.
There it is. Mate, I just want to say a massive, massive thank you. Please, as well, let everyone know where to find you, mate.
Yeah, so you can find me on social media, YouTube, Instagram, Steven Cohen, StevenCohen. Big on social, so please get connected. And then podcast is Millennial Millionaire on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Would love to connect with your audience, dude.
Mate, unbelievable. Thank you so much.
Dude, you're the man.